Uh-huh. Okay, thank you. So, welcome to the 5 people here at Tushita and the 11 people online, 12 people now. It looks like, yeah, some new people. Welcome, Veda and Tenzin, PK maybe, Karan, Tando, iPad, bracket 7, close brackets. Welcome, everyone. Okay. So thank you for taking time off from what I presume is a busy schedule or a busy life. It would be very unusual if you're not leading quite a busy life, unless, of course, you lost your mobile phone or something. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Very kind. I hope it'll be worthwhile for you, for all of us. And we can actually rejoice that all of us made this decision to take part either online or in person, because for the simple reason, which is going to be one of our main themes today, the simple reason that, we depend on the kindness of others. Yeah, we depend on the kindness of others. And this can sometimes be quite a new sort of idea for us, because often other people are really a nuisance, I mean, and sometimes downright, nasty and confrontational and give us a hard time. That is true. Of course, there are also ways to cope with that from a Buddhist perspective, but we could come to that later maybe. But on the whole, if we investigate, then others are so kind. If the other people didn't turn up for this evening session, then no session. If there was only one person, I would say, sorry, session canceled maybe. Or if there was nobody, I wasn't going to sit here by myself looking at a screen. So thank you, everybody. Rejoice that your contribution, helps everybody. And you may have joined for very personal, selfish even reason, not selfish, but self-centered, self-preoccupied, let's say. But actually your presence contributes to the overall endeavor. Okay, so we start with posture. It's always good to start with our posture and how we feel in our body, and to actually remember that there is this body, and we can come home to the body. We may have been all over the place today, literally, mentally, physically. We come back to the body sitting on a cushion or chair. So there's a physical sensation there which we can be aware of if we begin to slow down and actually pay attention. Because it's not likely to be it's not like a pain or being pricked by a pin where we do notice it, but there may be a much more of a neutral kind of sensation, but it's good to be aware of that. It's good to, in a sense, bring ourselves back to this bodily basis. Without this kind of body, we cannot attain awakening, really, or enlightenment. The body of a cat or the body of a scorpion or ant is not sufficient enough, even though they have the potential at some point due to the presence of the Buddha nature, but the body, the actual physical body, does not have the neurological and other kind of sophistication to support the mechanisms, the inner mechanisms that are necessary for full enlightenment. So anyway, we have this amazing human body. Let us not ignore it. So we bring our attention to that. And to the fact that there is breath happening, breathing. We're breathing in and out. That's keeping us alive. We're able to breathe in and out because there's an environment. So there we are surrounded by an environment, an atmosphere which contains oxygen. And then there's this phenomenon, process that we call the mind, an awareness that is happening, a consciousness, cognitive action is happening, you could say, moment by moment, moment to moment, without a break. Actually, according to Lord Buddha, it's been happening since beginningless time. No beginning to this stream of awareness, in a sense. So all of this is happening. And we could consider how we feel also in terms of our emotions, our feeling tone in terms of our awareness. Are we sad? Are we upset? Are we restless? Are we happy, joyful, calm, serene, perturbed, anxious, expectant, excited? What would we say is our state of mind right now? And isn't it interesting that it is probably a little different from how it was an hour or two ago, or whatever we can remember of the morning time, or perhaps when we were at work or with people. So there's this extraordinary display happening, you could say, display of awareness, bodily awareness, mental awareness, eye, ear, nose, tongue, touch consciousnesses, memories, plans. So much happening. And of course, we feel it's happening to me. It's happening to me. There's an I, there's a me. We feel very much that it's there's some kind of agent, orchestrator, central command to which all of this is happening. And that can be problematic. Anyhow, in terms of the initial motivation, again, apart from the rejoicing that all of us are contributing to each other's ability to be part of the session, apart from that, we need to recognize that there are countless beings on this planet for whom the display of mind and body is more of a nightmare at the moment than anything else, or somewhat like a disturbing dream. A disturbing process is happening for so many. And in fact, if one is not well on the path to awakening, then the Buddha said that we are actually in a state of dukkha, a contraction of the spaciousness, the natural spaciousness of the mind, a contraction due to ego grasping, self-grasping ignorance, and all the other painful, limiting emotions. Limiting emotions. We might also say destructive, actually. Destructive of inner peace, inner harmony. They block an awareness of our deeper purity, you could say. And beings are thereby going through all kinds of incredibly unsatisfactory and painful experience right now in this world, as we know, or at least as we know intellectually, through our gadgets and through what we see and hear, so forth. And from the perspective of the Dharma, we have, in a sense, taken a very wonderful, incredibly wonderful and very positive sort of situation, but we have smeared it with our ignorance and unwholesomeness, and thus made a mess, actually. Inner mess, outer mess. The outer mess we constantly see, and it's talked about and photographed, and articles are written about the outer mess and all of the disasters and so forth. The inner mess, we're not so aware of it. We certainly don't know how it works very well, what causes it. So how wonderful it would be if beings could be less distracted and could actually focus on what is happening and what the cause of this suffering is, what the cause of this unsatisfactoriness actually is. And how wonderful if they could take steps to remedy it. And in the Mahayana, the motivation extends beyond that to how wonderful if, I could do something to help other people. May I be able to help others be free of their confusion and so forth. Which necessitates understanding it within myself, working on it within myself first, to some degree. There is some very good news. There is some very good news. There is bad news and good news always. Bad news is that right now we're in a mess. And we would be foolish to deny it. Politically, socially, spiritually, economically, ecologically, you name it. It's rather a messy situation, by and large. Which is all the more ironic and sad because it's quite clear that we all want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And yet, we keep on creating the causes for what we don't actually want. Deep down, we don't want sorrow and suffering. The good news is as follows. And I'll quote something, and then we'll just spend a little while reflecting on this, and then watching the breath and calming the mind for a little while. And then we'll engage with the main topic of this evening, which is the ways in which others are kind. In this world, there are always possibilities of original purity. because the world is actually pure to begin with. Or you could say it is clean to begin with. Dirt never comes first at all. For example, when you buy new towels, they don't have dirt on them. Then as you use them, they become dirty. But you can always wash them and return them to their original state. In the same way, our entire physical and psychological existence and the world that we know, our sky, our earth, houses, everything we have, was and is, in a sense, originally clean. But then we begin to smear the situation with our conflicting emotions. Still, fundamentally speaking, our existence is good, is all good, and it is all launderable, launderable. That's what we mean by basic goodness. The pure ground that is always there waiting to be cleaned by us. We can always return to that primordial ground. So that's the logic of basic goodness, basic purity. So spend some time reflecting on this and the motivation, and then we can naturally move into the breath awareness practice, where we gently observe coming and going of the breath as it enters and leaves the body, with a body that is still, a relaxed mind, but very attentive and alert, without tension, but very awake. And if we notice that thoughts are coming, we recognize and gently let them go. Come back to the breath, sensation of the breath, and we relax with the out breath. Okay, so first we can reflect on the motivation and the original, what we think, what we feel when we hear about basic purity. Could that be so? And then the breath awareness. So we'll be quiet now for 10 minutes while we engage in these practices. First is slightly analytical. The second is more stabilizing, being with the breath. You need, please take a short break. बहुत दिन के बाद दिखाई पड़ रहे हैं, ठीक ठाक हैं? Okay. So what I want to do now is, again, it will require some work, some effort from all of us, but that's good, yeah. I'm not going to give some kind of lecture you can just listen to, or yeah, we're going to have to do some analytical meditation together based on material from Jeffrey Hopkins' book, Truthful Heart, which we've been looking at on and off for a few years, in which he's got a lot of very useful reflections, meditations on equality of self and others, equanimity, valuing others, so forth, developing compassion, based on his deep understanding, having been the Dalai Lama's translator. But not only that, but also through his practice. It seems like done a lot of practice, meditation practice. And the Dalai Lama has actually praised him for that, which is unusual. Dalai Lamaji doesn't praise people easily for no reason. So anyway, we're going to look at how others are kind, how sentient beings are kind. This is one of the basic reflections, because you see, when we, in the practice in Mahayana, generating compassion, of course, we reflect on how we and others are suffering, of course. And we look at the various kinds of suffering, and that's a very vast practice in itself, yeah, looking at the 3 kinds of suffering, or the way of dividing it into 6 or 8 kinds of suffering. All of that is very important. Obviously, it's an initial, very basic practice, yeah, one of the 4 basic meditations, together with death and impermanence, yeah, precious human life, karma, and so forth. Suffering is very important, but it makes it even more powerful when we realize that these beings include, these beings who are suffering, they've actually been and are being very kind to me. They are incredibly kind to me. We can appreciate that aspect. So, of course, at the moment, we may feel they are problematic, they're harming me, even some of them, annoying me, they make me nervous while I'm driving, whatever, all of these things. And there are too many of them. Sometimes we might feel there are too many other people. I need my space. But looked at from another perspective, which is always what we're trying to do, right? We're always trying to see things from something other than our usual jaded, habitual perspective. And when we do that, we can see something different, quite different. And we can appreciate what we are here calling the kindness of others. How not only and what's being said here is not only our physical well-being and just being alive, our existence, not only is that dependent on others, but even our spiritual growth, the real spiritual growth, not the phony one, not the act we may be putting on, but the real spiritual growth comes from the others being there, other people being there, in one way or another, either as helpers or as people who are hindering us. Whichever way, whatever they're doing, they can be seen as very, very kind and important in one's growing up, if you like, spiritually. Or another way of putting it, in our advancing closer and closer to a genuine openness, genuine compassion and love, then others are indispensable. And problematic people are indispensable also. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, so in the Tibetan tradition, and remember this is coming from the Indian Mahayana tradition, what His Holiness Dalai Lama calls Nalanda tradition, because of the extraordinary breadth and scope and depth of the teachings and the teachers at that incredible institution, which was really operational for hundreds and hundreds of years until its destruction in the 12th century. So in that tradition, the importance of the kindness of others is often spoken about initially by talking about the kindness of a parent, and usually the mother. Of course, mother may be a problematic person for us, some of us in our life, but here we're talking about somebody who cared for us sufficiently in those early years for us to still be alive today, you see. It did require an extraordinary amount of care. We have to acknowledge that, you know. Even if, for example, even if our mother was unkind to us and didn't take care of us properly after we were born, okay, let's say there is that scenario, and that does exist for many people, quite a few people. Still, it's the case, isn't it, that she held us, we were in her womb for about 9 months, you know? So that's actually quite something. We find it difficult maybe to take care of somebody for 9 minutes, you know? Even 9 seconds, we can get impatient if, you know, if we're in a hurry. But 9 months, you know, 9 months, most of us were within our mother's womb, you know? And okay, we might say, well, you know, I heard that she did this, she did that, and but we didn't die in the womb, you know. She took care of us enough that we survived and we were born. So that is something. All of us here online and here at Tushita, we all survived our time in the womb, and that was 9 months or so for most of us. Some a bit more, some a bit less. So there's something there, right? And the kindness could have extended, of course, to even before conception, where the mother, the parents are planning and, you know, thinking about how best to create the space for, you know, a good atmosphere and space for the child to be. So Jeffrey Hopkins speaks about how his Tibetan teachers, and here, you know, you have to remember there's some pretty hard-boiled Tibetan teachers, geshes, you know, very rugged and no-nonsense people who have done 20 years or so of study and so forth, and have not been involved as parents, at least. They're monks. They haven't been a parent, most of them. So here they talk about, you know, how my mother held me close to her flesh, rocking me to and fro on her 10 fingers. You know, he's quoting his Tibetan lamas, this translator of the Dalai Lama, Jeffrey Hopkins. Little babies and little children, when the mothers pull the blanket up to their shoulders and tuck them in at bedtime, they feel, how nice. Similarly, there's that feeling of running into the house to mother for protection. Little kids hug their parents' knees and feel cared for and safe. So we could spend a little while remembering a situation like that, evoke that childhood feeling. And if we can't remember so well. Well, remember from a bit later. There must have been somebody who gave you some kind of feeling of security and protection, even if it wasn't available perhaps from the parents for whatever reason. But remember a situation where you felt very protected and cared for by a parent. Bring that to mind. You might have had a nightmare and you rush to your parents, one of your parents, or to your parents' bed, and they give you some kindness and love, and you feel okay because you had this terrible nightmare, but then you feel okay and you can go back to sleep. And remember, when we were very young, we may have also woken our mother or parents up several times during the night. And people who have other things to do also during the day, it's not as though they're retired or something. So they do what has to be done. Nappy needs changing, change the nappy. Child needs to feed the child. Meaning feeding, they feed us, they feed me. So, and then Jeffrey Hopkins says this, which I think is very good, and reminds us of something very, very special. If you're able to remember your own mother's kindnesses, if you're able to remember your deep feelings for her and many specific instances of what she did for you, or if you watch mothers now, or if you have a child of your own, you'll see that a mother has to think about her child night and day, especially when it is an infant. If she stops thinking about the child, even for an hour, it might die. If she stops thinking about it for 10 or 12 hours, it may die. If after 24 hours, it's close to dying. Yeah, if she stops thinking about it for that long. So we usually don't have to think about anyone for 24 hours. We can go about our business. But our mothers had to think about us almost 24 hours a day. For days on end, months on end, yeah. Mothers often sleep lightly. When the child cries, mother wakes up. This is hard for the mother because the child cuts in on her time. She is tortured in her relationship to the child. Though she loves the child, it is also clear, and this is hard to face, that she sometimes regrets that the child has taken the little freedom she once had. So it can be hard to be with anyone who is that demanding, like a young child. But the mother copes, most mothers deal with it. Of course, as we read, and it's very sad to read these things, some mothers, fathers, kind of freak out. It's just too much for them. And they, of course, may even hurt or harm or whatever their children. But for most of us, she took care of us. Yet, as hard as the mother's situation is, she doesn't give up. then one of Jeffrey Hopkins' teachers, Khenso Legden, who was abbot of the Tantric College of Lower Lhasa in Tibet, he made the shocking observation that despite the suffering of childbirth, the mother doesn't throw one away like feces, but cherishes and takes care of her child. This is obvious when you think about it, but we don't usually realize that we're here because our mothers did not give us up at some point in our childhood. His statement is very graphic. It is meant to shake us, meant to jar us, meant to wake us up. Of course, we know, sadly, some mothers do give up their children. It's too much for them. But even in that scenario, we can say, well, up to that point, she did take care. And then someone else must have taken care to some extent, otherwise we'd be dead by now. We'd have been dead long ago. So somebody took care. And usually the mother or father took care. Then he goes on, sometimes, and I've heard this, from people, especially on courses, sometimes I've heard this. Sometimes we feel, my parents copulated, they conceived me now, damn it, let them take care of me. Right? It's their fault that we've been born, let them take care of us. Out comes a hand, they give a little money. But that's not enough. The hand comes right back out again. In terms of what we reflect on in Buddhism, in Buddhist practice, you reflect, and this, of course, requires a leap of awareness, of faith, if you like, or conviction. You reflect that at the end of the previous lifetime, your own consciousnesses, your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mental consciousnesses collected at the level of your heart. The consciousness may leave the body in many different ways, preferably upward or straight ahead, and it starts searching, so to speak, immediately for a suitable place for rebirth, at the end of the last life. By its own predispositions, it wants a certain place. And because our parents were copulating at that time, we obtained a human lifetime that is precious since it provides an opportunity to practice. So that's a provocative Buddhist point of view. Provocative meaning for many of us, because first of all, past lives don't make much sense, and because it said Buddhists have very clear, graphic understanding of what happens when we die and how we are reborn. So from this perspective, we are fortunate if we have a good rebirth and a good mother. It's certainly true. Most of our mothers individually took care of us closely, with the exception, of course, of orphans and persons cared for by somebody else. His teacher, Khenso Legden, also said that we are much like helpless bugs when we are born. We just lie there. And despite wanting to move, even if we have a presence of mind from our last lifetime, then we cannot. We have a difficult time getting used to this new body. It is not trained. It's like somebody who hurdled, athletics hurdled, at the age of 18, and then at age 48, goes out to try and hurdle again, cracking knees and ankles on the hurdles. In the same way, though we had a body that was trained before, we can't yet use this untrained new body that we have. And first of all, we may not even realize we have a body. They say very young kids, they don't see a separation between themselves and their mother's body, usually. They don't even realize they have their own body. So anyway, we have an untrained body. Then what happens? Mother feeds you, changes your diapers. She has to do everything for you. Of course, also dad does it. Dad may do it. And then later, while she holds you in her arms, you put your fingers on her nose and she says, nose. You reach for her eyebrow and she stick your finger in her eye and she says, eye. You put your finger on a tooth in her mouth and she says, tooth. Because she does this day after day, you finally learn how to talk. So your very speech is built on her kindness. She seldom does this mechanically. It's amazing. If your own compassion is to become profoundly deep and strong, it helps to eventually awaken and vividly remember the strong relationship you had at the beginning of this life with your mother. By eventually taking her as the model of the helpful friend and applying your intimate knowledge of her closeness to every sentient being, then the element of our self-centeredness can gradually fade away. We usually feel attachment to certain people and not to others. But if we were to apply this strong feeling to all sentient beings, the attachment fades. In the practice of generating compassion, some of you know, in the so-called six cause and one effect meditation, the first reflection, which is a very difficult one, of course, for most people, is that reflecting on all sentient beings as having been your mother. So obviously they can't all be your mother at once, but in previous lifetimes, all sentient beings have been our mother. Beginningless past lives. So they've been your mother in at least one former lifetime. And so all beings have engaged in an incredible amount of kindness towards us in beginningless, countless past lifetimes. Then we need to be mindful of that. We need to fill our mind with their kindness, become attentive to it. So mindfulness also means not forgetting. In fact, mindfulness, as we've said, in Sanskrit, smriti is remembrance. Think about this. course, from this perspective, it means that, the person you love the most in this life, they've been your mother in the past. The person who is neutral, the shopkeeper whose name you don't know, they've been our mother. And the person who's being unkind to you now, they've been your mother and cared for you in the past. Then he says this, which is useful. When you recognize how kind someone's been to you, you're using an ordinary worldly attitude to help keep you from responses of hatred. For example, if somebody gave me a grant with a blank check to form a team of translators of Tibetan thought, I would be more than extremely pleased. Now, if the person who gave me the money came by someday and gave me a hard time, I'd feel a measure of restraint due to reflecting on the person's kindness, the previous kindness. I would seek other means to work things out with that person. So when you reflect how kind every person has been, there is that restraint to the point where, believe it or not, trained Buddhists will look at a fly or an ant walking across the table and think, this is somebody who bore me in her womb in a former lifetime, who took care of me. If you watch how mothers take precautions for a child in the womb, it's clear that they do a great deal to help it. They eat nourishing foods, avoid harmful substances like coffee, alcohol, nicotine, drugs. If you reflect on how such a mother takes care of the child in the womb and extend this reflection to all sentient beings, I think that because your field of awareness is no longer just a few sentient beings, but is gradually expanding to include more and more, you can reflect on the mother's kindness without doing it merely because you were helped. The staggering debt deflates your sense of exaggerated importance. Start with your number one friend, and generate a sense that this person in a former lifetime is somebody whose knees you grabbed as you would grab a parent's. He says, in my case, it's my friend in Canada. I grabbed a hold of his knees in great delight, then moved from one friend to another friend, and then to neutral people. Reflect on this briefly. Well, this requires some imagination, obviously. Remember, we mentioned that once, that Jeffrey Hopkins says those who do best at meditation, this kind of meditation, those who have good imagination, they can think beyond the stereotype, normal, habitual way that we think, which is possibly quite limited. So we have to use our imagination. It doesn't mean it's a complete fantasy. It doesn't mean that. We have to use our imagination. Based on present life experience. Okay, so there is more to this meditation, but I think we could stop there for now and have a little discussion. And then before the end of the session, we're going to also recite what is called the Bardo prayer for someone who has died. And it's a very beautiful prayer. So that will take a few minutes at the end of the session. So for now, we can have some discussion, possibly based on what we have looked at so far in this session, which is maybe quite a lot to handle. So if anybody would like to comment or say something. Yes, Anilji.
My question was, as you mentioned about the mother conceiving the child, does the soul choose the mother, or
does the soul choose the mother? Soul is not a word we use in Buddhism. We would say, does the consciousness, the merely labeled awareness, consciousness, choose the mother? If we are a highly realized being who can control our death and intermediate state and rebirth, yes. But that is very, very rare, someone who can do that. Because those people are usually, we would say, governed by wisdom and compassion. I mean, they have developed it to such a great extent, based on obviously meditational prowess, if you like, or they really have tremendous amount of control of their minds, which they exercise during their lives, and then they can exercise it at the time of death. That is very few people, very few people. So no, we don't choose, but just like a magnet attracts certain things in its vicinity, you could say we are the intermediate state consciousness, it's called a Bardo being, that it is said, it is propelled by winds, subtle winds of karma, towards its appropriate parents. Yeah. So when we die in a normal way, uncontrolled people like us, meaning if we're not great yogis or bodhisattvas, then our death is governed by karmic causes. And so we have certain karmic propensities, and we have certain karmic connections with various beings, including future parents. Of course, we may not be born human, but say we are to be born human, then yeah, we have connections with certain beings, and the consciousness, the Bardo being, which has a very subtle body, which most of us can't see, but it has a very subtle body and obviously consciousness. It is said to be somewhat clairvoyant, so it can see where the future parents are, for example. It can get to those places in a split second, doesn't have to book a ticket. And in an instant, it can be there, where its future parents are populating. Okay, so it doesn't choose, but it is drawn there. It is almost, it has no choice. We only have choice if we have great control, which be careful with preordained, but yes, in one sense, yes. But not preordained by God or Buddha or something. It's like very powerful connection. And so it's interesting, say there are twins, it means that two beings or so, triplets or a whole bunch of beings had a strong connection at that point of time with that particular mother, father. Of course, you could argue, well, if you say in Buddhism, we've had a connection with all beings have been our mother, how come we choose, or not we choose, how come we are drawn towards a specific? Well, there are obviously laws relating to that, where that particular, it depends on which particular karmic causes are ripening and so forth at the time of death. Then they propel us to our particular future parents. This is all written about in Tibetan Book of Living and Dying and other books now. So that is very clearly stated how it works. In very bold, brief terms. Obviously, it's an incredibly complicated process. But the degree of descriptions in the Tibetan tradition is quite staggering on what is said to happen as we die, as we're dying, what is the inner process, once we're dead, and then the moments after death, and then toward all the way to conception, incredibly detailed. How? Based on yogis' remembrance of the situation and their clairvoyant ability to see clearly how ordinary people are dying and what their experiences is. Obviously, this takes basically an enlightened mind to see this carefully, properly. We can't even just say a clairvoyant person. It has to be a very highly realized, and if it's a Buddha, then of course it is said then their clairvoyance is totally unmistaken, no mistakes, seeing clearly. But for each of us, it's slightly different. Our experience in the intermediate state will be slightly different for everybody, because we all have different karmas ripening. But in general, there's a lot of things the tradition says about what we experience or can experience. And that can last for up to 49 days, that in-between period. Between death and conception can be 49 days max, it is said. It can be much quicker. Can be within seconds, especially if it's incredibly good or incredibly negative karma, the rebirth can be very quick. If it's incredibly negative, we can immediately be in a hellish situation. And of course, no human rebirth, but a hellish, like a nightmare. If it's to be human, then it, I don't know, probably could be a little longer, but it could be very almost instantaneous or something if it's if a very powerfully negative imprint ripens at death. Yeah. Which is why it's important to take care of dying people very well. Create the right atmosphere so that even someone who is engaged in a lot of negativity during their life, they can have a reasonably good death due to the right input. Yeah. But of course, for some, there's so much negativity ripening that it's very hard to help some people, obviously. Just like in life, it's very hard to help some people, isn't it? Who are very negative or angry or depressed or something. It's like one feels one can't get through to them, right? Or through to oneself sometimes if one is going through such experience. One wants to help oneself, but one feels one cannot. Anyway, good. Thank you for that question. So, what else, folks? It's mind-blowing, this kind of reflection, because there may be somebody, total stranger in this life, and then you're being told, you're being asked to think, oh, they were your kind mother or parent or something in a past life. What? Mind-boggling. It really stretches our credulity. It makes us stretch our mind. And even if we do have a good sense of past and future lives, have some faith in it or strong conviction, still to think that the person you now regard as an unfriendly person or a total stranger, or even your best friend, what? My best friend was my mother? Oh, wow. Or father? Because they've been both. It's not just mother. They've been father, mother, everything. Because we've had beginningless past lives. Again, that's staggering. The time frame is staggering. Time almost becomes meaningless. Welcome to Mahayana science fiction. Greater than, imagine. I think someone should really be doing a graphic novel on this kind of thing. Huh? Yeah. And there's only one author I know who, a great English novelist, Doris Lessing, who died not very long ago. And in her book, Shikasta, which itself means broken, she used a Persian word, seems, Shikasta. In that, she has an amazing, what I feel is based on her, some kind of inner knowledge she had. Sometimes you feel with certain novelists or great writers, they're very special people, they're not ordinary people. Anyway, she gives this amazing description of rebirth. Somebody, yeah, of kind of rebirth, how it is. And in the context of bodhisattva way of life, yes, she has these people in that novel who very clearly seem to be there as bodhisattvas working for others. Anyway, yeah. But this reflection on all sentient beings as one's mother is said to be one of the hardest, most difficult, obviously, analytical meditations in the whole of the Buddhist path. It is so difficult to get one's mind around that, obviously. Except unless you've done it before, and you might feel, yeah, that makes sense. It might make a lot of sense to some people. More intuitive people maybe, or people who've had that sense that with people they meet that, oh, wow, I feel so close to this person. They seem so motherly to me, It maybe we've had that experience with people who don't necessarily also have to be a woman. You could feel that way, with a male. Wow, this person's so kind. I feel, he's like a mother, Could be. But anyway, it's good to stretch one's mind a bit there. And even just thinking imaginatively about this, it can soften the way we think about people. Don't you think? beginning to think about people in another way, not just what they're manifesting right now, which could be total garbage or whatever from our point of view. So it's one's able to look at them differently. It doesn't mean to condone their present behavior, because of course people behave terribly, as we do sometimes possibly, but to understand that it's not always been that way. And that in the past they've helped us. Okay, Divs, your hands up. Sorry. I hope not for too long. Can you show your face when you speak? Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Kabir, I just raised my hand. Okay, so Kabir, sir, I had a question relating to something that's recently happening in my life. So people by default cause suffering to you, sometimes by their own nature, sometimes maybe because of what they have gone through in their lives. And to be honest, me, why am I entitled to this? Like, I have never in my rarest of thoughts ever done bad to anyone. But why am I entitled to this? Like, so gruesome of suffering of because of someone else has caused suffering to them now because they couldn't heal themselves, and then they put the garbage on you.
Right. Very good. Yeah, that's
But
right.
why? Like, I'm always like, why me? Because my sufferings have been gruesome, but why am I entitled to all this?
Why are you entitled to it?
Like, why am I put to all through all this?
Why are
Like,
you put through all this? Have
yeah,
you studied some Buddhism? Have you?
I have been very new to your sessions, and I am trying to
If I give an
understand.
introduction to Buddhism, then yeah, you're in trouble. But basically, you should read up a little bit about karma, cause and
Okay.
effect.
Yeah,
But what you
that
say
I
about other people having their own issues, that's a wonderful way to think, because there are, there are hundreds, thousands of things, aren't there, about other people and even about ourselves that we don't know. Especially if we've had previous lives and we can't even remember, what I had for breakfast 20 days ago. So we had birth, then we had previous life. So imagine the number of causes and conditions that impinge on, making us what we are now, or influencing this person who's giving you a hard time and making your life difficult. Imagine the amazing number of causes and conditions. As you mentioned, some of them, like they had a hard time, a hard childhood, whatever. But there's more than that. There's so many things, right? And so you say, why is it happening to you? Well, why do some people get sick and other people don't get sick? Why did some people die of COVID and other people not die, just get a little sick or not get any symptoms? Why? All these questions are pertinent to ask. And there are physical answers, obviously, but then you also have to say why. Why does someone have a better immunity system? Or why does someone who does have comorbidity not die, and a young person who seemed to be okay, they did die? Why? One begins to ask. And then one realizes there are deeper reasons for things, right? That we can't see. So karma is said to be a deeply hidden phenomena. The Buddha, we divide phenomena into three: manifest, hidden, and deeply hidden. So manifest phenomena is like the screen in front of you. That's very clear, very easy to see. On the relative level we're talking. Slightly hidden phenomena is what would be understanding the empty nature of that screen, or how it is considered to be empty of inherent existence, right? That the screen is empty, just as everything is considered empty or shunya. That is slightly hidden because it requires some reasoning, and quite a lot of reasoning, and maybe a lot of punya, merit, to begin to understand those things deeply, or at least a lot of study and meditation. But that's only slightly hidden. Deeply hidden phenomena, karma is one of those. Meaning, we can understand some things about karma. It makes a lot of sense. For example, that if I start stealing at a young age, it's going to become a habit. It could become a habit, and then it's very easy to me to steal later in life. And then to extend that from life to life. That is not so hard to understand. But there are some aspects of karma which are very difficult to understand. They are deeply hidden because we cannot see the cause. The Buddha can see, it is said, the cause why, to quote something, a cliche, good things happen to bad people or naughty people, and very awful things happen to very good, kind people. Why? What is the actual cause for specific things? Buddha, it is said, can see these things, but they're deeply hidden to us, obviously, deeply hidden to us. If there's a plane crash and most people die, why do 1 or 2 people survive? There are causes for this, not just where they were sitting in the plane, There's other people sitting in that part of the plane could die, but they don't. Why? It's said that there are causes for these things, deeper causes than just what is apparent to the investigators, So that's why you're entitled to it. That's why you're getting your dose, which you feel is more than your fair share. I mean, I know people who I just cannot believe, I really tell you, I cannot believe how much they are suffering. One thing after another, one thing after another. And I'm not talking about people I'm seeing on the news. I'm talking about people I know. One thing after another, unbelievable. And then one thing, how is that happening so much to this one person? But there are causes for these things, not just bad luck, And it's certainly not God wants it that way or Buddha wants it that way. And certainly not. They have created the cause to experience that. Just as, for example, somebody who eats in the wrong way, sleeps in the wrong way, does everything wrong, and then they get all these diseases. And you say, why are they getting so many diseases, lifestyle diseases and other diseases, and their immune system is totally gone crazy. Why? So then a good doctor can point to all these reasons, or your, what are they called? What are they called? Life therapist, what are they called? Life, what?
Life coach.
Life coach.
Coaching.
Life coach can tell you what you're doing wrong, So it's very clear.
Yeah,
So
but
and see all the things we have done that have created the cause for what we're experiencing now. So the best thing is not to feel totally upset, but actually to be happy that those causes are now being exhausted. You're experiencing results of that karma and they're being exhausted. Of course, the wise thing Buddha says to do is now understanding how karma does give its results is to purify the mind so that the karmic causes we have created will never give their results. That's what purification is about, purifying the mind. Many practices are there. So we don't have to experience a limitless amount of results, of limitless unwholesome actions that have been created in limitless previous lifetimes. It's staggering, it's scary, it's scary. For those who know, samsara is dreadful, it's scary.
yes.
And if you're living a nice, peaceful, happy life, it's still scary because it's like being on a very calm surface of an ocean, thinking it's great, and you have your beer and your, it's nice weather. And underneath you, the sharks are circling, and they're hungry. And you don't know about it.
Right.
And so a storm is brewing up, Western disturbance is brewing up, and you're gonna be out of that boat in the jaws of a shark before you know it. It's a bit like that, And there are plenty of stories we read, isn't it, about people having very nice, pleasant lives, and then suddenly, whoops, something happens and it becomes like a nightmare. They lose their money, or this happens, or that happens, or they have an accident. Someone turns up and says, oh, this property belongs to me, or something, not you. Anything can happen, right? You can have a brain tumor. You can get cancer. Your best friend can die. Your mother can die. Your father can die, etc. Yeah.
Yes, Kabir, I want to add a little bit to this.
Okay, a friend here wants to add. Robert, Canada
Yes,
wants
please.
to.
I just had a small thing to just add on the question
Okay.
that I get whatever you said, but this also happens that there is suffering, but added to those situations, our mind just doubles or multiplies it by 100 times,
Yes,
making it even more hard to survive.
exactly, which is why we need to train our minds. That's the point. Very good point. That's called the two darts in one of the early Buddhist teachings. The first dart is the physical suffering or something that's happening to us. The second dart is like how we mentally then churn it over and saying, oh,
yeah, create situations on our own.
Then we make a mountain out of what could have just been a molehill, right? Like
right.
And then blaming everyone and then blaming oneself and feeling it's all terrible and going into a deep, nosedive. Yeah, right. That's why.
So how to see the reality then? How to see the reality then? What is the reality then?
Studying, reflecting, and meditating. In our case, on the Buddhist path. That's the only way. The only way. And it's time tested, and it also is not something that happens in a hurry. So for busy modern people who are used to WhatsApp and instantaneous gratification and stuff, then we have to adjust our mind and say, look, this process is going to take some time. Has to be done. Okay, thanks. Yeah, there's other people we need to ask, but thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's just a very brief reflection here, and I'll see if there's a question in here. But actually, the topic we were just discussing now was the most contentious in the 10-day course that I just took at Kopan. And here's why, because I think, new to Buddhism and maybe even just coming to grasp with some of these sometimes mind-boggling concepts, we speak about karma and we look at all the horrors in the world and disasters. In fact, right before my 10-day course, we had that terrible earthquake in Turkey and Syria. And so the question put to our teacher, Joan, the Canadian nun, who taught us, was that, are we saying from the Buddhist perspective then that these people deserve, like what happens? And I forget the word that our friend used. And Joan was very
entitled. Are you entitled?
But Joan was very quick to say, no, we don't use that. It's not deserve. And I think in part because of what you were saying, Kabir, that really these type of karmic unfolding and connect and all the complexities involved, only a Buddha could really know that. So we are not in a place to judge. We respond with compassion instead to the person's situation. But in a way, it's almost like, I feel in that case, the prompt is not to think too much about karma, or at least not to think that we can know those connections. I wonder if you have any comment on that.
Yes, I do. We have to think about karma enough to want to prevent ourselves creating more unwholesome karma by understanding that unwholesome karma, or body, speech, and mind, gives suffering results. And, if a gardener is very careless and allows a lot of poisonous plants to grow in their garden, and the gardener's, by mistake himself or the gardener's daughter or son eats something poisonous and dies, does the gardener deserve that result? In one way, yes, he was careless. He may have known very well certain things were there, but just was too careless to, take care of it. So, but again, deserve is a strong word, isn't it? You would say he's created the cause to get that result. But when you use a word like deserve, it doesn't sound nice, does it? It sounds nice when you say you've created the cause for some good results. Do you deserve that? Yes. Then you like the word deserve. But to deserve something negative, we don't like that word, because actually deserve, it's not good. But do we need to not think about karma? No, we need to think more about karma, about how karma is definite, how it expands, how you don't experience the result unless you create the cause, which is very important. We want happiness, we want enlightenment. Let's say we want happiness. So do we imagine happiness doesn't have any causes at all? Given, of course, that sometimes the greatest joys come, as they say, unbidden. We're not trying to get them. But do we really think that happiness has no causes at all? Meaning that happy experiences, happy feelings, good, the fact that we have enough food in our stomachs and a good situation and have some freedom, do we think that doesn't have any causes? That would be foolish from Buddhist perspective. Of course it has causes. We've created causes to have this amazing human opportunity. So we do need to think about karma. But yeah, it's very important. And some of us teachers very quickly learned our lesson teaching at Tushita some years, decades back, when there were lots of ex-army Israeli soldiers, men and women, having a holiday after their army duty in Israel. You don't talk to them about the Holocaust in terms of the people who died deserving it. I mean, even just talking about it in a very careful, neutral way is like created a kind of uprising among the many Israeli students who used to come to those courses. So we have to be very careful how to talk about karma, because some of them, their parents, for example, have had traumatic experiences with their parents, you know, because dreadful things happened. Did they deserve it? You don't use that word. Did they create the cause? Yes. Otherwise, why would it happen? Things don't happen without causes. Do we know anything that happens without any kind of cause? I mean, does anything happen without a cause? Whether it's the unseasonal rainfall in Delhi or whatever, everything has a cause. Emotions coming up in the mind, do they have a cause? It seems like not, but in general, yes, they do. Anyway, sorry. Thank you for your question, Robert. Yes.
I was trying to see what she was saying in a different perspective.
Yes.
And also in the light of what we were practicing today.
Yes.
So like she said that other people are constantly causing problems. And I think it's one way of thinking. And if you think like that this person, there'll always be a cause, like you said, there'll always be a person there who is causing trouble.
Right.
But like we practice today, that the other person might be our mother, or was our mother in a previous life.
Yes.
So if we look at in that light, I think we should be able to forgive them. And I think forgiveness being the word here.
Should, yes, but very difficult, no? Say they're giving you a really hard time. Say, I don't know, say, take that recent case, where very high celebrity case. Who was it? Who's that famous actor? Very famous actor who's Pirates of the Caribbean.
Johnny Depp.
Huh?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. And he had this high-profile wife also, right? What was her name?
Amber Heard.
Yes, exactly. Each seems to be giving the other a very hard time. And what one was reading, yeah, dreadful. Of course, one side denying. So yeah, sometimes people are giving us a very hard time. Not easy to turn the tables and start thinking about how they were kind as one's mother and this and that. Because intellectually one might even accept it, but emotionally there's so much charge when you feel you've been hurt by somebody. And people, as we know, we can hurt each other terribly. Sometimes it's very connected to the amount, how close we were before, then to that extent we can hurt each other, right? So it's very difficult. So it requires, it seems to me, a lot of inner work over time. How could it happen quickly? I don't see how it could happen that we could change our perspective very quickly. I think it would be difficult, but not impossible to do. What?
She was only interested in his money.
That's your perspective.
Yeah, but I tell you
One
what,
perspective.
I followed it very closely. And
You follow the news closely, but you're not clairvoyant, Bob.
and
You obviously are on Johnny Depp's side, right? Some people were on her side. No, I'm not biased. No.
You're clairvoyant now.
Okay, question again. Divs is putting in her question again. When I go through so much, can I be a reason? Can I be a reason to divert the flow and not be the worst version? Can I be good to the worst, and how? That is not clear. Anyway, I think we cleared up a lot of, and you can bring it up again on Thursday if you're all alive on Thursday and there isn't a huge earthquake in Delhi, then we might still be alive on Thursday. God knows what will happen if there is a huge earthquake in Delhi, because I don't think many houses are designed to, certainly this one isn't, by the way. This one was built in 1966 and it's a beautiful building, but I don't think it's earthquake resistant. So if we're all alive, Dips, we can carry on Thursday. Is okay. Thursday is healing Buddha. So yeah, perfect for you. We can heal all of our problems on Thursday. And we might even be able to, yeah, but I think you've received some feedback. And the worst, you see, what is difficult is emotion, isn't it? Feelings of loss, feelings of being wronged, feelings of this person has betrayed me, blah, blah, blah. But those are just feelings. We have to realize feelings come from, the untrained mind, which is experiencing right now the results of previous karma. It will pass. It cannot last forever. It will pass. You're not going to feel the same way, at 10 o'clock tonight or at 6 a.m. in the morning. You may feel worse. You may feel better. You won't feel the same. Feelings are coming and going, aren't they? So then the thing is to be able to be a peaceful observer of it, as though one was watching an incredibly interesting movie, even beyond Netflix or Amazon capacity, unbelievable movie of the mind. But that's not easy either, because we feel it's me suffering. So we still have that delusion of the me, solid me, which feels ever so solid when we're going through difficulties, right? Feels even more solid then. And this is why we get hurt, obviously, also, because there's something solid. If we were completely porous and someone throws a stone at us, it just goes through us, like in some of the movies, maybe. But we feel so solid, everything hits us. We're like putting our red flag up and saying, hit me, We are creating the target, as they say. So of course the bullets are going to hit us because we've created a target. If we don't create the target by being much more calm and gentle and wise and so forth, which doesn't happen overnight, right? Then we're not going to feel the bullets so much. They will feel like, first they'll feel like rubber bullets, and then they'll feel like feathers, maybe. And it could be quite entertaining to watch the show and not be identifying. But of course, we're talking of quite, slightly more advanced practice that comes through training the mind. So it's all about training the mind and not trying to change external reality, changing everybody else, which sometimes we feel we'd like to do. So as the great Shantideva, one great Indian Pandit said in his classic text, where would you find enough leather to cover the whole world? It's better to just cover your own feet. Wear shoes on your own feet, and then the work is done. Yeah. So anyway, I think we'll stop now. We have to recite the Bardo prayer. Sorry, I did promise Bob we would do this. Could you hand out one copy to everyone? Thanks. This is a beautiful prayer to be recited. And of course, we could, it's been something we've been looking at today anyway, yeah, past and future lives. So we are praying for, what was her name again, Bob? Mondal. So we can just say Mrs. Mondal. It's a very, very lovely prayer addressed to the Buddhas, to the compassionate ones. Yeah. I guess one could adapt it sometimes for anybody who is going through suffering. But this lady has just died. How long ago did she die, Bob? Huh?
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. So very recent. So from a Buddhist perspective, for a couple of weeks, it is said for people, if they're still in the intermediate state, in the bardo, then they do have quite a strong connection still with their past life, meaning they can see things which are happening, especially with their relations or their place where they lived. There is a kind of a link, there's a connection, for some beings, it's very confusing. They don't actually realize properly they've died, So it's very confusing situation in the intermediate state and very scary for the untrained mind. So this prayer is very important. And of course, it would be very powerful for people to recite who are close to that person, or somebody with a lot of compassion or tremendous purity. If they pray, then of course makes it more powerful. But us collectively praying also is very good, very good. And of course, it creates positive energy in our own mind, even if it's not helping that being. We are creating the cause to, be more and more compassionate. Okay, so we can recite this together. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, abiding in all directions, endowed with great compassion, endowed with foreknowledge, endowed with the divine eye, endowed with love, affording protection to sentient beings, please, through the power of your great compassion, come forth. Please accept these offerings, both actually presented and mentally created. O compassionate ones, you who possess the wisdom of understanding, the love of compassion, the power of doing divine deeds, and of protecting in incomprehensible measure, Mrs. Mandal is passing from this world to the next. She is taking a great leap. The light of this world has faded for her. She has entered solitude with her karmic forces. She has gone into a vast silence. She is borne away by the great ocean of birth and death. O compassionate ones, protect Mrs. Mondal, who is defenseless. Be to her like a father and mother. O compassionate ones, let not the force of your compassion be weak, but aid her. Let Miss Mondal not go into miserable states of existence. Forget not your ancient vows. So dedicate for people you know who have died also, and so many are dying daily in war and so forth, and they all need protection, you see, in the intermediate state. The karmic forces are disturbing and troubling for the untrained mind. So please also, it could be very powerful for us now to dedicate that we become like a protector for others, that we attain the ability to really benefit others, for which we will need a tremendous amount of meditative awareness, a tremendous amount of compassion and wisdom. So may we become like that through studying, reflecting, and meditating on the path. May we never be separated from the teachings, from the path. May we never be separated from our qualified teachers. May all our teachers, great teachers, have long and healthy lives. May all their wishes be fulfilled, their wishes for us. May we come closer to realizing have a realization of this meditation of the kindness of mother sentient beings, especially how all sentient beings have been our mother and father and showered us with kindness in the past. And may we seek to repay their kindness in the best way, which is to help them all to become enlightened themselves. and forever be free of this frightening ocean of samsaric suffering, where nothing is certain, nothing whatsoever is certain, and final satisfaction is impossible in samsara. Meaning the contaminated aggregates of body and mind are fueled by karma. That's what we mean by samsara. Not a place, a state of mind. Okay, so everybody, thank you very much. Those online, those here at Tushita. Next session is Thursday, right? Today is Tuesday, yes. Next session is Thursday. It will be a medicine Buddha practice. We will send the sadhana online for those who don't have it, those who are on our WhatsApp group. If you're not on the group, join. So medicine Buddha practice, healing Buddha practice, together with some Tara prayers and mantra also. So join if you can. Thank you very much. Good night.